Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Xero. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I'll most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, we see here a quite simple structure, or so it seems, because well, this does look like an initial 5-wave move to the upside. I see a couple of issues internally in this pattern. So firstly, in this supposed wave 3, we have failed to reach the ideal target at the 138.2% extension of the wave 1. Not a deal breaker necessarily, but it does bring some issues. Now, despite the fact that we failed to get there, we have held the area of support for a wave 4 correction and extended in another wave to the upside to new all-time highs. But that brings me to the second issue, which is that within this follow-up to higher prices, we have only formed a 3-wave pattern. Now, this is actually an issue because I was looking for an impulse to be built within this area. I have quite clearly here a 1, 2, 3, 4th and 5th. Then even within this internal wave 3, I can track an impulse, and that would be suggesting to me that this would be an overshoot instead. That this might not even be a 3rd wave, in fact. So technically, I could consider this to be a large leading diagonal, and we will keep this scenario as a backup. But for me, I would probably prefer the interpretation where I would track here a double 1, 2, 1, 2 setup instead, where we would have been still in the wave 2 correction from the 2020 high in December. This high in our initially supposed wave 3 to the upside that we will track as a wave 1 instead on this chart in our primary interpretation, at least until we get evidence that something else might be going on indeed. Now, in either case, I would be expecting this correction to extend to lower prices, and this scenario is even more bullish, short and long term, because the area of support is closer to the current price points. We are watching here the levels between the $59 down to the $20.7. In the case of a more major top in a wave 1 being here, we would be watching a much lower area of support that would allow a deeper retracement indeed, but it would only start at the $46 level and extend all the way down to the $10 level. Now, personally, I just prefer this interpretation where we are tracking an internal 1-2 setup. It would be expecting to form afterwards an impulse within a wave 3, a 4th and a 5th, and even then, even once this is complete, another 4th and 5th to complete the entire pattern. Now, internally, in the wave 2, this is what we are going to focus on this chart, at least until we get a more clearly defined low in place. But within this wave 2, I'm tracking an A, B, C structure to unfold, within which we have a quite clear impulse to be going on in our wave C. So I think there's no denying that we should be prepared for quite substantial extensions still in this pattern, because as I see it right now, we might be building an internal wave 3 sooner rather than later. But even then, I would expect additional extensions to even lower prices, because here I would be tracking only an internal wave 3 to the downside within discount, because even here I have an additional 1-2 setup in place. In this case, once we have this 3rd wave complete, I would look for another 4th and the 5th to complete the large wave C. Keep in mind, it is not absolutely necessary for us to form an entire impulse to the downside in a wave C. The structure could turn into what is often seen as an incomplete correction in a WXY. I just find it extremely unlikely based on the internal structures within this push to the downside. So what I'm focusing on is, once again, specifically this internal wave 3, and actually I believe it is probably best to look only from the daily time frame at this. Now, in this expectation, I would consider even a potential double 1-2-1-2 setup to have formed here, a 3rd wave down, a 4th wave up, and a 5th wave that would be expected to be ongoing still. Within this 5th wave, I'm looking at an impulse, it seems, and I would honestly be prepared that we don't get, or that we don't turn this supposed internal 5th wave, this supposed internal fifth wave into the actual wave 3, because as it stands right now, we do see substantial divergences here. We do see that this internal wave 3 is likely complete and that we are within a fourth and a fifth. But if this extends much longer, we might be witnessing what would turn it into a 1-2 setup instead, and this would become the actual wave 3. In that case, we would need to track even additional 4 or 5 patterns afterwards, and so on, because we would have probably like 5 or so 1-2 setups where we actually got the wave 3 delivered, and we need to look for quite low prices before assuming a bottom to be in place due to a full count. Of course, if we get an initial structure that would allow us to track potential upside from a smaller time frame, we may be able to track such an idea, but until such is the case, I would stay away and I would be extremely careful, even considering positions outside of the area of support that we have clearly defined here in white between the $58.6, once again, down to the $20.7. Now, this correction extending to much lower prices isn't necessarily a problem because we haven't gotten into our area of support still, yeah? Within this entire correction we have for now for our wave 2, we have not yet touched the area of support, and I would not worry about this extending too much. I would still even prefer to actually get into it to have started our accumulation area. Now again, what I want to highlight on this chart is that we should be extremely careful. We shouldn't be looking for positions right now, I believe, and we may see a bit of additional slowdown here at the levels between the $72 down to the $62 at these previous swing lows that have formed more substantial reactions to the upside. Additionally, we have some more at the 38.2% retracement, very much in line with the previous swing low before extending into our wave 1 top here in December 2020. Now, if we want to watch for a level of resistance that I would consider ultimate, and if we get a sharp break above it, we may be able to consider a more substantial bottom to possibly be in place. I would need to consider this area of resistance for a wave 4, but looking at the internal structure we see here alone, I find this extremely unlikely to actually work out, and as we move lower within this wave 3, this area of resistance will need to come along with it. Currently, we are watching the 115, let's say $116 level. A break above that would be a strong signal that we may have formed a more substantial low, but I wouldn't get my hopes up, honestly, because, yeah, this count just seems very much incomplete within really any interpretation I would track within this chart. So right now, I'm focusing probably still on lower prices in this area. Even internally, we may track here a 1-2 setup and the third wave down, and then we would need a series of 4 or 5 patterns, or at least one more substantial one, because here we could have something like a double 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 3, 4th, 5th, 4th, 5th, 4th, 5th, and so on. This could extend much lower. I wouldn't want to assume a count. I wouldn't want to look too much into the internal pattern where we strongly lack the structure that we need to clearly define the waves. So just keep this in mind. Extensions are possible. We are looking for continued downside, and right now, even though divergences are in place here, we may see this become the actual wave 3. I don't believe that will be the case. I believe we are indeed in the fifth wave to the downside part of this wave 3. But even within this fifth wave, I would be prepared for it to extend even further. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.